Incremental greetings. This is the 19th section of the Pleasurable guide to SuperMemo, the Fluency cycle, and it's dedicated to spaced repetition and neural review. Neural review will only be here. That's it. It's only introduced. I'm letting you know that this is a big thing in incremental breathing, but it takes time. First, there are a lot of prerequisites, and second, even if you don't have prerequisites, you will need time anyways, because it needs a rich collection. But we still tackle this, just an overview, because it's extremely important, cannot be skipped. Everything else is about spaced repetition, but it's not what you think. I'm not going to explain how it works. It's just an explanation to a 5-year-old, very easy English, and that's about it. You don't need to understand what happens behind the curtains. Just trust the algorithm. That you want to know how it works, go to the mastery or to the completionist cycle of the course. We will see what is most relevant for the day-to-day user. Why the minimum interval each one day? Then the recall grades for items. This only applies to items, the flashcards. You know that there are several. You can have the emoji, remove the emoji if you prefer, how to undo the repetition. Then this is important, how to assess the grade semantically, why this is crucial, the challenges you will face, subjectivity, time, knowledge formulation, some guidelines, grading over speed, what should you do, how long it should last, the repetition, the algorithm, the alerts you get, understanding them or how to skip them, so default to the first choice. Then the repetition history, understanding how the repetitions are represented. As you can see, all of this is nothing to do with the algorithm. It's as a user. This is independent of, the retrievability is calculated with this formula, That's why I don't know if it's the best title, spaced repetition, because it's not technical. Then, we'll understand just the basics of retention rate, the forgetting index, and that's it. We will go with the memory lapse, introduce a Leech lizard. It's color-coded, so you can see at least the minimum of what to do when you have items that you keep forgetting. The workload, the introduction and limitations, and only retention and consolidation. There's plenty more in the calendar, but we only want this. When it's useful to look at that. So not only we are only focusing on one layer, is that only at times we will focus on that layer and the graphs, and that's about it. Everything, and this is, I'm letting you know everything else that exists that we will see in the mastery, in case you want, and the neural review that I mentioned before. So you can see it's very practical, albeit some theory is minimized, and all of the math and so on, it will be covered mostly on the completionist, perhaps to your surprise. Mastery will be, again, pragmatic, but with diminishing returns. But it will be based on still trust in the algorithm and some error values and so on that you will see if is proof you can trust the algorithm or not. Without going meta, that will be for the completionist. So, without further ado, let's start the section. So basically here, we're going to explain more or less how the algorithm works, the SM18, very, very high level explanation for babies or to a 5-year-old. So we already have done this in a very high level. Now we are doing the same, just using the jargon. That's it. We're not going to dig into details, the math involved, all of that. This will be in the mastery track, just in case you really want to understand how it works. It's like Wi-Fi, right? Okay, how does the Wi-Fi work? You don't know. I don't know. I only know how to use it. Okay, I need to connect this, I need to turn this on, pam, pam, pam. That's it. How the physics and engineering happens to create Wi-Fi, beyond me. So it's the same philosophy. So the scheduling algorithm in SuperMemo, this is the 18, it's just a minor difference from the SuperMemo 17 and S17. The algorithm is the different version of the release version. So now I'm using SuperMemo 19 with SM-18. So when you have the dash is the version of the algorithm, not SuperMemo release, if this makes sense. Then, how this works. SuperMemo computes a starting interval, because in SuperMemo, everything has an interval. You don't have new stuff like in Anki. So use the forgetting curve. The more information you have from the user, the better. Then, at the end of the interval, theoretically, ideally, you make the repetition. Could be the case that you do it after a while, it was outstanding for a few days, or you do cramming and you do it ahead of time. But let's simplify here. Then, just after the repetition, SuperMemo will compute a new difficulty. Remember, the paradigm is the three-component model of long-term memory. Difficulty, retrievability, and stability. Nothing new. Nice. So computes new difficulty, and look at the expression. Estimate, not computing. Estimates retrievability using the three sources of information, and estimates the stability. It's just an educated guess, it's not a calculation. You don't know when you're going to forget, but I can approximate that by estimation. So using retrievability, how likely it is in percentage you're going to remember that. Stability, for how long you will remember that. So meaning if it's a month, any day on that month, you'll be able to recall that memory in 90%, forgetting retention rate. And with this difficulty, retrievability, and stability, you compute the next optimum interval. Because you want to optimize, meaning optimizing, sending to the future as possible. Optimizing, meaning keeping the minimum number of repetitions without forgetting it. Or forgetting the stuff within some ratio called retention rate, or forgetting the index from what you want to forget. So if I put 95, which is the default in SuperMemo, I will forget, but this forgetting is controlled. Then, SuperMemo will update, behind the curtains, the memory matrices used for those computations. There are different matrices, you don't need to know what exactly, just to know that this information will come later, because you go back to point 2, at the end of the interval, because you will do the next repetition, everything repeats. But the starting interval, that will be for future items, will use more data. If my collection now is brand new, I will use the default settings, which comes from a few expert users. But the more information there is for me, for the matrices, the better. The more optimized it is on my performance. Because these matrices is A, if you have already seen cards, flashcards or items, in this difficulty range and this stability range. So we know already how you behaved, how you performed with kind of a similar flashcard. So it becomes easier to predict, if this makes sense. And it's just looping this. The more information, the more granular, the more fine-tuned it can be. So if at the beginning the algorithm is overshooting, it's estimating a performance I cannot achieve, it will adapt as you collect data, as it collects data from you. So this is the only thing we're going to see in the Fluency track. Just to let you know that not everything is available, because it's proprietary, but there's plenty of data available. That's why FSRS now, it's the gold standard for open source algorithms, because it has borrowed a lot from SuperMemo's algorithm. That's all you need to know for now. Just trust the algorithm, and if now it doesn't work, just leave it some weeks or months if you're an outlier case, and it will get a lot more accurate. Now that we have introduced already the algorithm, the question, usually one of the big differences in SuperMemo, if you come from other places, is that the minimum interval is 1 day. This is true for every single element type. So, not just topics, but flashcards, items, they only have 1 day. For instance, this very same element is 1 day. That implies that if I do a repetition today, I cannot do another one during the same day, later today. It will have to be tomorrow, the soonest. This is by design. Why? Because doing repetitions within the same day is just a waste of time. There's no benefit. As simple as that. Then we should ask, hey, but a lot of people actually do this, especially in Anki. You have the learning steps, right? 10 minutes. A lot of people do that. Correct. This now leads to the conclusion that a lot of people are misusing spaced repetition, which is a big deal already, not the point of this video, or they are repurposing spaced repetition. That instead of optimizing for the long term, I optimize for the extremely short term, as short term as tomorrow, that I need to cram for an exam. Therefore, in this situation, it makes sense to revisit the same item more than once. But that's not how SuperMemo works. If you remember, at the beginning of the course, we had the philosophy SuperMemo. That's why, even if the calculation says 0.4, let's say, SuperMemo will always go up to 1 day. Even if the math isn't mathing, it will round up, always round up to 1 day. That doesn't mean that it's not impossible to do, because if you remember, a premise in SuperMemo is that the user has a lot of power, and yes, there are some features you can use to overrule that and log more than one repetition on the same element on the same day. We're not going to set only on the mastery track, but just to let you know that this is possible, but by no means I suggest that. That's why I keep it off from the Fluency. So now you know. If you're used to the Anki style, please get some patience, be patient, and eventually, sooner or later, you realize that you really don't want a feature to have intervals shorter than a day. Doesn't make any sense at all. If you optimize for the long term, you won't gain any retention rate. You don't lapse figure cards. You just spend more time. That's about it. So now finally we're going to cover the grades. Something that is unique to items. Even though this isn't a slide, I just modified so it's an item, so I can show it to you. So that will be the front, then you reveal the answer, and then you have the grades, the grading. You need to tell SuperMemo how was your recall. You can do pass and fail, I remembered or I forget it, but you also can do it qualitatively. Even if I remembered, yeah, I struggled, it was easy, and so on. Then, you have 5 options on the layout, on the interface, at the bottom of the element window. By default, you have emoji. We will see that you can get rid of the emoji if you want. But you already have some hint. Excellent response with given without any hesitation, correct response, substantial effort, hasty recall, or no recall. Nice. Just to let you know, those are the names. The labels are not seen now. Null, bad, fail, passed, good, and bright, or great. Depending on the SuperMemo version, it's bright or great. But wait. How many grades there are? There are actually 6. The number 0, the null, also known as the complete blackout, is not on the user interface. You can only do it by manual input. Oh, sorry. You can only do it by manual input. Then you can use the mouse, the option you want, but take into mind that the order is the opposite. It starts from 5 to 1, not 1 to 5. So starts with the easiest. It's the other way from the physical keyboard. They don't change it. This is one of the things, one example, that they don't want to change it because expert users already use this, and they prioritize expert users above new users. So this is not going to change. That's it. Then we have 6, 3 for remembering, a pass, and 3 for forgetting or failure. So if you want, you can just say pass and fail, and that's it. I do bad and good, number 1 and 4, and that's pretty much it. Or you can fine-tune this. In the mastery track, we will see some use cases and the pros and cons. What happens if you only use one option for success and for failure, or if you use more than one, or you use everything. Just to let you know that the SuperMemo now, SM19, doesn't wait much. It's a borderline negligent, the difference between the options of remembering and forgetting. It's just more qualitatively for the user when seeing the stats, the graphs, and so on, rather than data to feed to the algorithm. Have this in mind. And then in the last option, we have the original SM2 behavior. This is absolutely legacy, but I just left it because it was in the official documentation, and it just makes obvious that when you do it qualitatively before, the factor increased is the same or decreases, is what was Anki doing just before FSRS. And when you failed, it always decreased. Now this is not used at all, so no worries. It waits, but borderline negligible. For the mastery, we will see everything else. For the fluency, it's just this video. We don't cover space opposition much. Just the overview as we have seen. Those are the grades. It's mandatory. There will be no point for SuperMemo to not know the answer. If you don't say to SuperMemo, yes, I remember this, or I forgot, they cannot read your brain, at least for now. So that's how you communicate with SuperMemo. And this is only applies to items. So we have seen already the grades there are in SuperMemo. Now, if you don't want the emoji, what's useful is that we can go to the toolkits options, and then in the SuperMemo tab, there's one checkbox for grade icons. If we uncheck that, because by default it's checked, now it's the same, we need to update, and now we see the default name. Great, good, pass, fail, bad, and cancel. Depends on you. If you prefer that I want text so it doesn't steal the attention too much, the emoji because it's red, flashy, and so on, something you can do. And in the mastery track, we will see that you can actually customize that. With the translation, you can translate the basic user interface for a limited, and instead of translating, you keep using English, but you put something else. So you could use easy, good, or whatever you want. Or just one letter, or just the numbers, so it's more succinct. Depends on you. So remember this little trick. This is per collection. So if you use multiple collections, you'll need to go every time and check the box, or uncheck it every single time. And the effect is not immediate. You need to cancel, show answer, and here you go. Good detail. We just covered the great recalls in SuperMemo, but there's something else that we didn't mention, and it's quite useful. And it's rare in SuperMemo. And it's an undo. That, hey, by accident I press a space because it's the default, or enter. Default on number 3. Oopsie doopsie. It was a mistake. I can cancel or do Alt G if you want to use a key binding. And I have an opportunity that, no, I actually wanted the little to no recall. Nice. That's why, actually, and still now, it's not locked. When I click next repetition, and the next element will be shown, SuperMemo will actually lock this in the history. Not just yet. Why? Because there's an opportunity still to cancel it. So instead of registering it, and then go look that number, delete it, and so on, it just stays this in memory. And when you move on, there's no undo possible. Let's do this. Learn. Now there's no undo. Do you see? I cannot undo. There are still a few things you can do, like editing the memory, editing the history, and deleting the repetition manually, like delete. And now you do it again, but this has, you have to know the consequences of what you're doing. That's why I don't suggest to do it. There's no dedicated video for that on the Fluency track. But I'm just mention it. In the rarest cases that it was 1 year interval, now it's in the 3 years, whatever, instead of deleting the repetition, it's easier to you reschedule that to the next year. The harm you do is less, believe me. You don't need to understand now why. If you want, it will be the mastery track. And if you grade with the mouse, by the way, you can cancel super easy. Cancel. And even if you're here, you already canceled, you can cancel once again, and once again. This is especially true if you want to move on, meaning that it's not that instead of a number 4, option 4, I want option 2. No, instead of number 4, I want no grading. I don't want to grade the card at all, the item. That's how you do it. You cancel several times, and the repetition didn't happen. The same as if I just do this, that I just don't do the repetition, I just simulate the repetition with Shift Alt L. So now you know. Pretty convenient when it's a mistake or when you pressed enter several times by accident, you can undo it. We appreciate when there's an undo feature in SuperMemo that, as we mentioned, is quite rare. Sadly, it's rare. So now we're going to see how you can assess the recall grading in SuperMemo semantically. By semantically, we say evaluating your recall based on the true meaning and true understanding, rather than just rote memorization or surface level. That, I am able to recall the answer, but that doesn't mean it's good necessarily. So it's about how accurately and effortlessly you can access the concept behind the question, not just the wording of the question. So we'll see what means to grade it semantically. Focus on understanding. This is just a habit. So even if you're reading, you don't read as a parrot. You make all of the you activate all of the concepts that are the phrasing, the words. It's just a human trigger, and that's it. You are not limited to just the words. You make all of the mental effort that, this makes sense. The cliche, right? The mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell. Then, cell. I know what it is, the concept. This is divided in parts, the name in English, and all of this. So basically, you can reproduce it in your own words. Doesn't have to be the precise wording you are actually reading. It's one of the many wordings there are. Nice. Then you have the effort and confidence. A perfect semantic recall, which is grade 5, the easiest, means it came instantly confidently, you didn't doubt that I think it's this other thing. I am on the edge about two or more options. No, no, no. It's split in a split second. I'm very confident. I don't hesitate at all. It indicates a very strong neural trace. That's why you can do it. It will be great for if you got it right, but perhaps you had a slight delay or you are thought about a distractor. What's the capital of... I mean, all of the examples will be dummy, I know. But this so anyone can understand this. What's the capital of Australia? Oh, I know it's not Sydney, it's Canberra. But I have to do this exercise because my mind still goes automatically to Sydney. I will grade number 4 because I don't do Canberra right away. I need to do this quick exercise that, hey, I know it's not Sydney. And pass, the number 3, is succeed, is if I had some distractors, I had a significant effort as a consequence, a long delay, or there's some minor inaccuracy. That perhaps I misspell it or mispronounce it, but it's the same thing still. Is I don't care about the spelling. Perhaps I will create a different card just for the spelling if it's from a different language, like the capital of Lithuania or Slovakia. Yeah, more or less, but I don't know the precise spelling, right? But I don't care enough to know the spelling. I don't need to know the spelling because I only want to recognize this when I see it. Oh yeah, that city is the capital of the country. That's it. Then, beyond the exact wording. If the question asks for a definition and you provide the correct definition, that conveys the full meaning, even if it uses different synonyms. But you still grade it anyways. Meaning, let me see some because I want these examples. You have a question that basically, I want to keep it global. The answer is double. You could say twice as much. Yeah, saying twice or duplicating. Doubling, sorry. Oh, it's the same, right? Or multiply by 2. Well, there are different expressions of the same concept, that is double. That's why, what happens with blood pressure if you stop breathing for a few seconds? Or you do a lot of strength, for instance, training, you want to do deadlift, while you do it and you don't breathe specifically, what happens with blood pressure? It increases, right? Momentarily. But I can say it augments, increases, rises. There's different multiple ways to say that, even if it's just one single verb. So now imagine this with phrases. There's a plethora of options I could do. The same with AI. I could ask this question to AI, and since it's not non-deterministic, I will get a slightly different answer, worded answer, but semantically is the same. That's why you should do it semantically. Is this meaning what actually was asking the question? It's correct, even though I haven't used the same words. Unless the question is something about verbatim. That what it says in the coin of, I don't know, whatever, $1 or whatever currency you want. Hey, it says in God we trust, it says na. Then I should care about this because this is verbatim. Yeah, what's the meaning of, okay, I can accept that because I'm asking the meaning. But here is a different question. I'm asking what is precisely written in the coin or in the bill. That makes distinctive. Then how are you going to grade this? If it's the coin, is no, that's a failure. The meaning is the same, but it's not this precise choice of wording. But that will be an outlier case. Next, and final is identifying weakness. Semantic grading helps identifying items where your understanding is shaky, is still too immature. So even if you guys can occasionally brute force the answer, these are items that need more attention and reformulation. Meaning that it's borderline, so I still can recall it, I didn't forget it, but it is like a hot potato, that it's very unstable, And I just do brute force that, and I discarded all of the options. I tried to recall what I did while creating it. Too much effort. I'm not doing the right pathway, semantically, right? So what I'm going to do is, hey, reformulate this already. That's why, perhaps, semantically, I will say, hey, that's a number 3, is success. I pass the grading, but I will still reformulate it as if I have failed it. Because I know it's almost guaranteed next time I see it, I will fail it. So I will see the rephrased version next time instead. So this is more or less the few points to take into account when grading the recall semantically. Now that we have seen how to assess the grading recall semantically, we're going to see why this is crucial. It makes a big difference in SuperMemo. Let's see that. First dimension is that accurate feedback to the algorithm. Since I'm true to myself, I'm honest, and I'm strict, and I'm consistent in this strictness, I have very curated, fine-tuned grading to SuperMemo. Even though SuperMemo at the end of the day now is most pass and fail, between pass or failure, the option you choose doesn't have that much weight, still has some small impact in the very long term. Negligent or borderline negligent, but still make a difference, or it makes a difference for you on the stats. So it's not something that I just pass. So how you grade will have an impact. If you don't grade right, that you only do, if it's exactly how it's written, not semantically, you will have some issues in the future. So then, in this accuracy, we have calibrate item difficulty. If you remember, this is one of the 3 components of long-term memory: difficulty, retriability, and stability. That means that if you struggle, even if you get it right with effort, you should have interval increase slower. Semantic grading provides this nuance. On the same path, we have optimized intervals. Because it's not that, hey, I just forgot that, I forget it, and it becomes a reset. No, it's that, oh man, I black out, I have no idea about this at all, and this will be the number 0 or 1, and this could affect the siblings, or could affect other future cards that are in the same row in the matrix. Meaning that future cards within the same difficulty, the same retriability range, and so on, this data will be used to assess future algorithms, to assess future optimum intervals for related cards. That is when you make this nuance, right? So the closer the grade is to the true, to the reality, the closer the ideal maximum retention with minimal effort. Because you will still forget it. Because SuperMemo will optimize to 95% retention rate, or the one you choose, by default 95%. That means that you will have longer intervals, and you will still forget the same amount. Nice. So in other words, you won't have extra repetitions because the recall was not that accurate. Then you can identify problems with items, because consistent low grades means the card is too hard for you, there's too much gap of knowledge, so it becomes asemantic, you cannot connect it with something you know, or it's very poorly formulated. So if you are great semantically, you can identify this before you leech the card. You can only lapse it twice and 3 times, but just twice will be enough that, hey, it's very likely it's not about me as a human that I lapsed because this happens, we were not perfect. I think I'm confident enough that this card can be improved. Sometimes it won't. It's just that I just forgot it because I am human, basically. So this prompts to reformulate, which is one of the core tenets of effective use of SuperMemo. You don't wait to become a Leech. Nice. All of this was the accurate feedback of the algorithm. Now we have two more. Reinforces semantic reading, a semantic grading of the recall reinforces deeper learning because you go beyond the surface level. It's not that, hey, is the string matching? What it's like people who want to type in the answer, is this matching? Well, if you are in language learning, yes, it is. It's what you want. You want correct spelling, or if you want to get comfortable with a new keyboard layout, well, it's more procedural. Maybe I'm gonna still do it. But other than that, it's useless because you will grade semantically. So instead of increases, I said augments or gets higher, it's the same, right? So if I will be typing this, it will be a failure because it's not the same string. So this promotes a deeper understanding and a stronger, more interconnected memory traces because forces you to actively engage with the meaning. The words are just a container. So when I read the blood pressure increases, I have blood pressure, I have apnea, the concept of increase or decrease, and then I make the relationship of those concepts. This is beyond language. It transcends language. It's very abstract. That's why I could even then phrase it in any language I speak. Doesn't have to be English. Or within the same language, I could use plain language, I could use an analogy, or I could use a scientific jargon if I know it. So this is the opposite of rote learning, that you will do verbatim what you read in the textbook or the source. It's what you will memorize. That doesn't mean you truly understand. You are able to recall the answer. That doesn't mean you have understood that. And third is that semantic recall grading prevents the passing the buck. What means by that? If you grade linearly, easily, that the threshold is very low, giving a good or a perfect grade when you struggled, you're effectively passing the buck to a future you. Your future self will pay tax because you have overgraded. You have inflated the grade. You're telling to SuperMemo something's not real. It's better than reality. Therefore, the algorithm will optimize for longer intervals that you can afford, for stability that you won't be able to keep up. So when it's too far out and it reappears, pops up in your repetitions because it becomes outstanding again, it's likely you have forgotten it, leading to a lapse. And if you keep this practice, you will lapse this several times and it will become a leech. But not because it's badly formulated, it's because the interval is not optimal. You're lying to the algorithm. If you lie to the algorithm, it's very likely you will have longer intervals than you need to. Or the opposite, shorter intervals than you need to. But usually the human bias is to go beyond your limits. So semantic grading helps you to be honest with yourself. And you will keep your current state. Even if you think you're not lying to yourself, it does have an effect. That I will remember, and then you will see this next time, and you remember, yes. But keep in mind that this is like a balloon. It keeps expanding because since you successfully recall that, even if it was later than optimal, then SuperMemo says, hey, this guy has this memory. Can I still remember it? But I want to optimize to 95% retention rate. And this guy, the user, is getting a higher retention rate. Therefore, I still need to increase it more, the intervals even longer, so it can lower the retention rate to 95%. Because the user is overperforming. So eventually, even if you have a very good memory, you reach a point that it's way beyond your limits. Because SuperMemo will keep expanding and expanding until you go to 95% average retention rate. So it's a matter of when you will lose. Just a matter of when you will lose. if you lie to yourself. We have seen how to grade your recall in SuperMemo for items, then how to do it semantically, and why is a big thing. It's crucial for SuperMemo. Now we're going to see the challenges, because okay, it's very easy to tell you, do this, do that, but it's not easy to put it into practice. There are three dimensions in the challenges. One is subjectivity. So what for me is effort, substantial effort, for you will be different. Like everyone has their own pain threshold. What is mildly painful or painful, it will be different for you. So this is the same. So it takes practice and self-awareness to consistently apply the grading skill accurately. So for instance, I have been using spatial repetition for 15 years, so now I'm pretty accurate because I have done this millions of times already, in language, in non-language, in a lot of different domains, right? I could say I have done all of the mistakes possible. I am still a victim of human heuristics and biases, but what has changed is that I am aware of those. That doesn't mean that being aware I can combat, neutralize those, but I minimize those. So I'm pretty consistent, and that's what I suggest. For subjectivity, we're not going to be machines, so we cannot be objective. At least be consistent, and what's best for this consistency is systematic approach. And to have a systematic approach, the best is conventions. We have seen already how to grade, seemed easy to recall. Then you will see, hey, if this is language, what means easy to recall? If what I ask is a date, when was that, and you will see those archetypes, those patterns, and since across years, you will see the effects of, hey, I thought this was easy. I read it as easy. But when it's a year, woof, when it becomes into multiple years, intervals, I ask when was that, when that person died, or the one event, is oopsie doopsie, now I kind of forget, right? It's going too quickly. It's growing too quickly, the interval. So what means in years, easy is not the same as in language, right? Like, it's not the same as walking here on my apartment than walking on the pool or in the ocean with water, right? So that easy is different. Then, it just takes practice. Then, time. You know that in SuperMemo, it's not that the time is not even, doesn't have an impact in the grading and in the interval calculation. Is that it's not even logged to begin with. Meaning it's never used. The only thing it's logged is the total average in your collection. In the stats window, you see average time below 4 seconds, about 4 seconds. Now that this collection is mostly language stuff, quantity based, more than 80% of my collection now is language stuff. Okay, so I know that the average has decreased. But how long was each repetition? I don't know, because it doesn't have any effect. You do it, a rule of thumb. So for instance, one question, I needed 15 seconds, but it wasn't a split second. And how is that possible? It's because it was rather long, because I have to specify the case, all of the nuances, because those nuances makes a difference in the answer. And sometimes, like language item, what is the past tense of be? What is the past tense of to drink? Boom. I don't need 15 seconds because first I have read the sentence, or where, I don't know, what's the capital of any country? Boom. It's so quick to respond, right? First, is the length of the question, the complexity of the question or formulation, and then the fatigue. It's not the same if I respond to this question at the beginning of the session that I'm fresh, or after 100 flashcards that I have seen already. So there's too much. Therefore, the time is a challenge because it's not telling you much. Yeah, you could say the longer you take, the weaker the recall. But there's too much, there are too many factors in the equation. Therefore, I never take the time into consideration. Unless it's part of the nature, it's part of why I created the flashcard. For instance, that's an outlier case. I had one exam back in the day with databases in computer science. So the exam was super easy because that was in the math faculty. So actually the teachers and so on, the lecturers, were mathematicians specialized in computer science, not the other way around. So basically you could express all of the databases logics with pure math. So for them it was so easy that, oh man, we cannot make an exam hard enough based on this. So what they did is to keep it extremely short. So you need to know everything by heart. So there's no thinking time. It's, I read, I understand the question or the problem, I execute. Because the exam was meant usually for 5 hours. All of the other subjects were always 5 hours. And this was 2.5. So you have half the time than usual. Then what I needed is I don't need to recall this. I don't require to have this knowledge. I need to recall it and apply it super quick. That's an artificial. Could be that in your job this is critical and you want to keep the recall time very low, very short. Meaning that if I was right, I recalled the precise answer, like spot on. If I needed too much time, it's a failure. Because this doesn't help me in the exam. I need to go quicker. This is one of the examples, but this is an artificial situation. And if you use SuperMemo long term, which is, I hope, the default, this will be an outlier case. Only for flashcards, that is to make decisions, that those decisions have to be done quick. Other than that, it will do more of a disservice. And then, finally, the item formulation. If it's formulated, it's ambiguous, then what are you asking? Or there are multiple possible answers, like asking for a definition. What is a mitochondria? Or there's too much information, it's not atomic, and so on. Your thing becomes difficult because I asked for a list. The list had 7 items, I did 5. How do I grade that? Because some repetitions I will do 3. Some repetitions I will do 5. Is the recalling 5 items in the list better than 3? You could say so, right? So instead of 1, I will put 2. Failure, great. Because it's still a failure. But yeah, to begin with, you should not have a list. So this will become a challenge. So the better the item formulation, the easier will be to assess the grading. Even though it's just one of the layers. It's not the entire body. So this is all of the challenges in semantic grading recall. And this is for the long term. Easy to say, extremely hard to apply. Now that we know how to assess the recall of the items in SuperMemo, now let's see some repetition time guidelines. Even though we have seen, actually, that the time is one of the challenges to grade the recall, there are still some useful information, but it's more like an umbrella. It's not just to grade the item, it's to evaluate the item that this perhaps is even useless. So let's see that. We have the first rule, grading over speed. Before you worry about time, focus on your grading process. So first you do the quality, And then, in case there's like your turn, you're undecided, it's very on the fence, if it's failure or a pass, you could use the time to make the choice. Okay, it has been too long. I put it as a failure. But it's never the focus. First, the time is just to make the difference, a tie break, and that's it. Consistency is key. And it's just for this. To pass and fail. I'm not going to use the time. No, instead of a 0, it's 1. No. Because this is qualitatively. It's an entire blackout that I don't even recall reading this, creating the flashcard, or whatever is that. It's the first time I see this in my life, a blackout, that, oh yeah, now that I see the answer, now I do remember. That's a massive difference qualitatively. So even if I spend a lot of time, if after seeing the answer, oh, then it makes sense, I recall it, I now make the connection, stays the same grade. Not because I have spent a minute. It's no, I spent too much time. It will be 0, right? So use time, repetition time, just as a tiebreaker, and just as to put failure or pass between 2 and 3. That's it. And consistency is key. So don't do this just one exception and that's it. Do this always the case that this is on the fence. Ask to yourself, okay, is it going to be blackout? No. Now that I see the answer, makes sense? Yes. Now perhaps I am the sense. It was a hazy recall. It makes all of the sense, or some detail escaped. And hey, it's meaningful. If it's meaningful, it's still a fail. If I got it, I could put it into pass. But if I put into pass, and then I spend like a super long time, perhaps I will still make it a passing, the maximum non-passing rate, if it's important. If it's one detail, but I don't care, like the capital of some African country, like I also recognize this when I see it in real life. So for me, it's not a big deal. If when I write it down, I do some mistake in the spelling. So we could say at some degree, very advanced, the priority will also make this, will play a role. This becomes much easier if you follow the golden rule, keep your items simple and atomic. And the goal is not to be a harsh judge, but a consistent one. And that's the thing. So every user, every SuperMemo user, even if you are more lenient, as long as you're consistent, the algorithm will adjust to yourself, to your performance. Perhaps your threshold is higher, but since you're consistent, it does make a difference. And since what makes a difference in the algorithm, it's pass and fail. So between pass, 3 or 5, yes, the interval will grow a little more, but it's not something significant anymore. It's more qualitative for you. It won't impact the algorithm much if you are super harsh or you are lenient. As long as you're consistent that no, this is a fail, this is a pass. As long as you spend time with this and you do this a fair decision, the quality between them, negligent. And then some question that people ask, especially Anki users that start with SuperMemo, is how long should a single repetition take? There's no answer. To begin with, there's no answer. But if you want to answer, speed can be an indicator of item quality. Because you need to read for 20 seconds, that means the question is super long. So a target time could be between 15 seconds. Rule of thumb. It's not dead dead on time, that if it's 15, it's a failure. No. A rule of thumb. Then longer times, like 20 or more, may indicate poor focus or tiredness. Could be true. It's just fatigue. That if I have seen this item tomorrow in the morning, I could have to do it in less time. Or could be something unrelated to this, and it's just that it's a poorly formulated item. that, oh, what it means by that, what it means by this, and so on. So I have to do all of this process, and this consumes time. And then after 20 seconds, oh, now I understand the question and I can recall it. So actually my recall time was instant, because my time was invested not on trying to recall, but on trying to understand what I'm being asked. It's not the same thing. That's why the question time is not relevant. What's relevant is the recall time. But SuperMemo cannot do that because it's not reading our brain. That's why the time is not that relevant. How it should take, as long as you need, whatever that is. That's it. Then solutions. If you are focused on or tired, take a break. Or stop for today. Or if you are an expert user, you can do interleaving. So you change the topic and you can keep going. And if it's the second case, reformulate the default items. And this reformulating could be creating more flashcards. Because sometimes, if it's not atomic, to make it atomic, you will need several flashcards. So I'm sorry that there's no magical number, and it will never be a magic number. Because it's like, if you want one analogy, it's like saying, for how long, for how milliseconds should I blink? Oh, now I'm blinking less often, for longer, right? I mean, as long as you complete the function, there's not much point on the duration, right? It's not a metric you should focus for health. This, the repetition time, which is not the recall time, by the way, is not a metric that is you should focus on. That's why in SuperMemo, it's so drastic that it's not even logged to begin with. Hope this makes sense. See you incrementally. And remember, longer times doesn't mean slower learning or worse memory at all. Depends on your style, the content of what you read, and so on. So, too many metrics to make an evaluation. We're going to see the alert choices in SuperMemo when you do repetitions. So first we're going to go Toolkit and Options, Learning, and we have these, Algorithm SM18 alerts. Basically, SuperMemo is running different versions of the algorithm at the same time on your own collection. And the alert is when they differ a lot. So SuperMemo 18 tells you that. SuperMemo 16 tells you this. And oopsie doopsie, there's quite a few margin of difference. Then here we can tell the threshold. So if they differ 50%, so one is 1 month, 30 days, and the other is 45 or more, meaning the interval is at least 50% difference, show me the alert. If you don't want to see that, put 99, which is almost impossible to do. At the same time, you can do it in days. Hey, if the difference is in 100 days between different algorithms, show me the answer. Show me the alert and let me choose. And again, put something very high so you never need to do that. And the A factor, remember that is from 1.3 to 6.9. I still have some room here that it may be shown up. Now, I will put something very low to guarantee I will see it. Now I grade, and because I graded, I have these choices window now. And I have SuperMemo 19 suggests, because I'm using SuperMemo 19, but the SuperMemo 19 release uses SuperMemo 18 algorithm, anyways, is the same thing. Says 1 year, 7 months, 26 days, and 15, 7 days. Oh my god, it's a massive difference here. Then you have the 3-component memory, difficulty, stability, and retrievability, suggest 1 year, 1 month, and 23 days. Quite similar to SuperMemo 19, but slightly lower. In this case, I have the opportunity to overrule the algorithm. In this situation, it's an outlier, and therefore I will choose some other algorithm like SuperMemo 15, or the minimum. Minimum regressive means that the interval needs to grow. So whatever is the previous interval plus 1 day will be the minimum. What I will suggest is to always choose this one. Trust the algorithm. Perhaps in some outlier cases, very isolated, SuperMemo 19 won't work as best. Could be true. But those are like 0.00%. I mean, it's at the end of the day a few seconds, a month you will be losing. So the time you invest choosing what option to do is the time you will save by doing fewer repetitions. So at the end of the day, I keep it simple. Just put in the options something very high, so the threshold doesn't trigger. Therefore, the first option will be still selected by default. I'm using SuperMemo 19. When 20 is released, the new algorithm, SuperMemo 19, will be used. Same thing. I want to use the 19 over the 18 and over the 15 or FSRS or whatever. So now you know. Now when I click Next Repetition and I grade, I no longer have the alert. Easy peasy. And in case you really want to modify, just do it manually if you really want to bypass the algorithm. So now that we know the element parameters window, there's another window we can get from here, and it's the history. Basically are all of the repetitions you have done. Because any element can be scheduled, not just flashcards, items. So in this case, it's a topic that has been dismissed and so on, but it's actually a concept. Now we're not going to get into the details until the section of a space repetition. What does that mean? A topic repetition, it's a concept, right? That just means a non-item repetition. Remember, most of the places in SuperMemo when it says topic means non-item. Topics, tasks, and concepts. But most concepts will be dismissed. So you don't have many repetitions. And then you have some stats for each repetition. For now, we only want to present the concept of the repetition history of this element. You can also access this directly by passing the element parameters dialog with Ctrl-Shift-H. You go here directly. There is quite a lot of sauce here, but it will be covered with a space repetition on other places for the non-items, but not here, not now. So it's super easy. What's the key binding? History, H for history, Ctrl-Shift-H for history. That you don't remember, you just go to the parameters and click here. You might remember that a while ago I did a video about how repetitions are actually counted. And related to that is how repetitions is actually represented, which is not the same thing. And to your surprise, or perhaps not surprise, it's not that intuitive how SuperMemo says, hey, this element has this many repetitions, which is not necessarily the amount of repetitions you have done. Let's look into that. In the element window, you have priority, and you have how many repetitions you have done. In this case, it's quite massive, 77 reps. It's a topic. Cool. That's because it's a summary, so I just do one of a few each repetition, and this will take a few hundred. It's 77, so if today I do the rep, now I have 78. It goes and accumulates. But that doesn't mean is how many repetitions you have done. Is how many repetitions you have done until the last lapse or since the start. In this case, it's weird because it's a topic. You cannot lapse a topic. But you can do something like reset or dismiss or forget. So many different things. So what will happen if I do this? I dismiss it. Whoops! 0 reps. How is that even possible? Because I have all of those repetitions here, but it's not taking into account because it starts until it has been reset. Usually, if it's an item, it will be reset because of a lapse. But topics can also be reset as items. I can reset by dismissing, for instance. And now I can memorize it again. Learning and remember. And here now I have one rep, which is the automatic rep. Here you go. Or in this case it's topic, repetition, and the future. So what happens if it's an item? Let's check that. So now I will filter. So that's a good example. It says 3 reps and 3 in parentheses. That means the memory lapses I did. So you may be thinking, oh, how many reps I did? 3. I did more than 3. I did 8. But it only takes into account from the last failure or since the start. That means that if I never lapse a card, an item, the number of repetitions displayed is the number of reps overall I did. But if I lapse it, it will be the amount of repetitions since last lapse, memory lapse. So since I lapse it, I have 2 ratings of 3, and the next one, the future. Then why should you care about this detail? Because now, remember, I have reset the topic with 70-something repetitions. So now what will going to happen is that if I use the filter, and I want repetitions to be over 66, for topics, what's going to happen? Hey, it's not found. Why? Because even if there are 77 repetitions, I have reset it by dismissing it, and then memorize, set remember. So therefore now I only have what? Let me search for it. Now I only have 1 rep. So take this into account, especially for items that you have quite a lot of repetitions, or topics like this that I do keep in my collection as a very high priority. Not now, because of the dismissing it, has decreased the priority to the lowest. Look at the priority before, it was super high. So if you use topics like this, that you will have many repetitions, you want to filter those, so keep this in mind, especially for items. If you want to do a subset of how many repetitions, then hey, repetitions since last labs. So therefore, instead of how many repetitions, like let's put 10, and I only want items. Let's see what pops up. Okay, 100 and something. I can't believe that's super easy. I can't believe I lapsed this card. Single page of information starting SuperMemo, an element. Obviously, how I could forget that at the beginning. Oh my god. In this case, yeah, I still have 12 reps instead of 15 because the lapses were at the very beginning. Let me check another example. That's a better example. So in this case, I have 8 repetitions, 9th being the future, but overall it's the 21st. So as a user, I cannot search, I cannot filter by the overall amount of repetitions I have done in an item. Unlike in Anki, you can do it with total reps. So if that's the case, the take-home message is that in case you want to filter, keep in mind, don't take the amount of repetitions as an absolute value. If you want the highest amount of reps, because you may assume it's the items you have done the most repetitions in them, it's unlikely. Because if you do more repetitions, it's almost a golden rule, it's because you have lapsed them. Therefore, you have done more reps. It's a requisite to do more than 20 repetitions on an item. So therefore, instead of having here 20-something repetitions, no, just decrease it and add the lapse here, the lapse count, because that will be more meaningful. Because how SuperMemo works, that only shows how many reps until the last lapse. You have, how many times you have lapsed? 5. And since the last one is the 8th repetition. How many I did? I don't know. Unless I go to the history, and then I will know. Exceptionally, I'm not using SuperMemo. I'm using Notion just for my convenience of showing you formulae and plots. But basically, what is the core concept of the forgetting index? We have seen already retention rate. But retention rate uses the forgetting index. One uses the other, right? Yeah, but if I understand one, how I'm going to understand the other, right? Easy. Think SuperMemo as your personal memory trainer. The forgetting index is the key setting control, representing the percentage of information you're willing to forget before the software prompts you with review. We're not perfect. We need to forget, right? It's how much you're willing to forget. 10%, which is the default. It's arbitrarily chosen, by the way. We'll see that. So then the forgetting index is an index already. You know that you have ratios, etc. Then it's the target percentage of items you are expected to have forgotten by the time SuperMemo schedules them for review. So every 100 items, I will have forgotten 10. There is a direct relationship with retention rate, because at the moment of the repetition, and only on that time, let me put that on the line, emphasis, the duration rate is 100 minus the forgetting index, only in this case. So if the forgetting index is 10%, aims for 90% retention rate at the time of the review. Across the entire time interval, it will be this function instead. Minus forgetting index over the natural logarithm of 1 minus forgetting index. That's why 10% forgetting index is not 90 retention rate, it's about 95%. Strictly speaking, it's 94.97, I think, because you just this formula. Nice. Then we can actually plot this. I will be using from alpha, easy software to use, right? This is 0.2, meaning 20%. It's the maximum forgetting index you can request. The minimum is 3%, which will be 0.03. Do you see? That's the maximum, 0.20. And it's about 80 something. Do you see it's below the 90%? It's not linear, as you may imagine. That if it's 20, it will be 80, right? That's the recall. Or retention rate only at the moment of the repetition. Today it's outstanding. Only in that case is a synonym. Then, the default is 10. If we go to 10, more or less is 95. You see it's almost 95 without being 95. So this is the easy plot. And if it's 0.03, it's very close to 99%. The missing returns already. So 10 was chosen arbitrarily because it's a good ratio of the time I'm spending versus what I'm getting as a retention. It's a very good case. Nice. And that's just to prove that's the intersection. So now we know that the desired for retention, by the way, remember, desired or requested, not the actual measured, goes by this. So once you see in SuperMemo this 96% and 7%, hey, that doesn't add up to 100%. Exactly. Because it's not 100% minus forgetting index. It is minus forgetting index divided over 1 minus forgetting index. So now you know the true difference. First, understanding the forgetting index and retention rate, how they differentiate with each other, and that the retention rate is a different thing of recall, or they are synonyms only on the time of the repetition. This is something that many Anki users fail to understand, and they think that recall and retention rate are the same thing. I'm sorry, but it's not. Hope is clear enough with just those cases. The maximum is the intersection. You can set any value from here, 0.03 to 0.2, and the default is 10. So you can guess, hey, if I have 12, like it's my case, I'm aiming at what? A 94-ish. without doing the math, just by the plot. It's a lot easier. I don't want to use the logs. That's not for me. I keep it simple, just visually. I1 92 is 15 or 16. Yeah, between 15 and 16. I will have to choose one of those. Easy. So now we need to distinguish. We have heard about the forgetting index. Now we need to distinguish two: the desired or requested forgetting index versus the actual measured forgetting index. If I go to Toolkit and Options, then in the Loading tab, I have the forgetting index by default collection-wise. In this case, it's 12. By default, it's 10. Remember that you can go from 3%, the most strict, to 20%, the most relaxed. Okay. Also remember that this is not linear. 10% forgetting index doesn't mean 90% retention rate. Means 90% recall, not retention. Then, 10% means 94.97%, about 95% retention rate. Awesome. But this is what I'm requesting. The SuperMemo algorithm will be trying to adapt, to adjust. If I overperform, it will calculate new intervals of longer days, so I worsen my performance. If I am underperforming, it will shorten the intervals until I get to the desired forgetting index. How do I know that? Easy. It's in the stats window. Do you see my retention rate 96.2%, and measured forgetting index is 7.3%. I'm overperforming. My requested index, by the way, is not 12. The measured forgetting index is 7.34, which is pretty good. But the average forgetting index requested is 11.69. How come? Because the default of the collection is 12, so most of the items will have 12, but some language learning, Korean and especially that is harder, I use lower desired forgetting index, but since it's a small fraction of the collection, it just lowers 0.3% overall. So the average forgetting index requested 11.69, and the actual measured is 7.34. That means that SuperMemo still didn't catch up since I merged collections and I have language learning, especially English, that is easier for me. Therefore, I'm temporarily overperforming, meaning that as I do repetitions, it will adapt. That, hey, it will be, if I didn't merge collections, it will be, let's say, the next interval, 100 days, 100 days. But now, because my forgetting index is lower, my measured forgetting index is lower than my desired, requested forgetting one, it will shoot to 120 to say something. Because SuperMemo wants me to forget more, because that is why I requested. And slowly, I will get there. Then, you don't need, as a Fluent user, you don't need to worry about forgetting index. Feel free to always use the default, 10%. You will just know that the measured here will be close to 10%. If the collection is very tiny or very new, recent, no big deal. You just need time. But in the long term, you need to adjust. It will adjust itself. It won't be dead on, but it will be pretty close. So now you know, especially in the mastery track, that we will differentiate requested or desired forgetting index and measured forgetting index. One is what you want, the other thing is what you're getting at the end of the day. Hey, tomorrow morning will rain, and then turns out it's not raining, right? Like the weather forecast kind of thing. So let's introduce the concept of lapse, to lapse an item or a flashcard. So in the context of SuperMemo, that means a memory lapse. That that a flashcard is being repeated and oopsie doopsie, I forgot the answer. For whatever reason. Could be a genuine blackout because we're human, we fail, we're not machines. Or because you thought of something else, an interference. Or because you didn't understood what you were being asked, especially if it's a close deletion, and especially if you're a noob. Then in SuperMemo, this means 0 to 2, the grades. Remember that the 0 is not shown in the interface, so most of the time will be 1 and 2, or the last two images in the emoji. Those are failure, and the failure grades lapse the card. 3, 4, and 5, they don't lapse the card because they're a successful recall. And then you can do this number of times. So this will be scheduled once again, and you can lapse it for a second time and a third and so on. And this will become what's called a leech. So it's cumulative, can only be increased the number of times you lapse a card, and is a metric that is used for identifying problematic cards or low quality flashcards. But for now it's just enough that, hey, when we say lapse a flashcard or an item, we mean this. Now that we know what is a memory lapse, and if you repeat this, you lapse an item enough, it will become a leech. Now let's introduce the Leech manager. Then there's no menu you can click and go there. So what we're going to do is try to do a repetition on an item that is already a leech. Okay, so those are the most lapsed items in my own collection. So now if I force a subset, okay, this appears. Hey, leech alert! And this is very odd because, okay, you have a lot of buttons, but some buttons are redundant, right? I mean, show answer is the same as show answer in the element window. Not only that, you have the grading in vertical instead of horizontal. Okay, you can grade in this window if you want to. And then you have lapses, 11, and interval just for days. But what is all of this color? What means the orange and the yellow, right? One step at a time. We also have postpone. That means that, hey, I'm not going to even reveal the answer, and without revealing the answer, I will postpone it. It's one flow. Or I can forget it, meaning send it to a pending queue, dismiss it, so it will become yellow, it will be ignored, or straight delete it, that it's gone from my collection. Not only that, I also have some checkboxes to apply something automatically. For instance, I have the checkbox include semi-leeches. That means that this leech alert, the wizard, will appear for the items that are one repetition away to become a leech. If I put auto forget, it's like putting always forget. So it will take this action automatically without me deciding. You can postpone for the days you want. You have you can edit parameters, the element parameters window, nothing special. We have seen that. But hey, what happened now? I closed the new window, the new dialog, but closing this dialog closes both the dialog that has open, the element parameters in this case, and the leech alert. What do we do now? No worries. Click on Learn, and it appears again. So this is just the introduction for the of this dialog, leech alert. If you don't see that, it's because you need to go to the toolkit settings, to the toolkit options, and in the leeches tab, the leech management, you have wizard. Wizard means something that will help you decide. If you remember, if we have checked the box of auto forget, is the same as here, auto forget. And remember that it's not possible to have auto forget and the wizard at the same time, because auto forget is to bypass the wizard to always decide preemptively this decision, send it to the pending queue. What I can also do is semi-leeches. No, I cannot auto forget semi-leeches, if you see. It goes back to wizard. It's not that counterintuitive as you may imagine. It's just how it's in the user interface, it's implemented in a quite weird way, but it's not a big deal. Then for the fluency track, you only need to decide, you only need to worry about the decision. What do we do with this Leech? We're not going to cover exactly what to do, and so on. What I don't suggest, so I will tell you what not to do, is the auto postpone, because you will never see it again, basically. It's like the same as deleting, but keeping it in your collection. We have seen now the Leech wizard. Now let's continue with the color coding. Okay, so in lapses, this is completely blue, and in interval, it's completely red. That means it's a semi-Leech. It's one repetition away, one repetition with a lapse, so 0, 2, 0, 1, and 2 grading, because you could do a successful repetition, from becoming a Leech. That's why it's complete. It's 100%. There's no fraction of something else. Because then, after you lapse, then you can do something successful, and it will appear different. So now we have the easiest case. The red in the interval means the same. Means it's a semi-Leech. Nice. Continue. Same example. Then here, then in this case, hey, why in this item it doesn't appear? I have lapsed this 7 times, right? But I have 4 repetitions since last lapse. I can also verify this. Now look, I have done I leached that already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But I have done enough successful recall that this is not longer a leech. Look, in the last 10 repetitions, I only failed once. It was a leech, not anymore. That's why the wizard doesn't pop up anymore. Okay. Here we have a different case. In this case, the color coding, instead of blue and red, is orange and yellow. This already tells you it's a full-fledged leech already. It's not a semi-leech. Even though this alert includes semi-leeches now, this is not a semi-leech. It's a full-fledged leech. Nice. So it has been failed enough times to be a leech. Then the interval, it's 1 day, so it's full. There's nothing else we can do, so everything is yellow. Makes sense. And in the lapses, it says 11, you see it's like 10% more or less the yellow, or less than 10%, and the rest is orange. We can see that I only have 2 repetitions. So this is more or less the number of repetitions, number of times that this leech has been forgotten, 11, but the ratio of the color is the number of successful repetitions you have done. So if I continue to answer this correctly from now on, this will be increasing the color. So now I say show answer. Oh yeah, I will say good. I rate as good and continue. Okay. Now it's the same case as before. Now if I go back and I simulate the learning process, do you see? Now the interval was everything yellow. Now it doesn't. So the purpose of this color coding is to have a very quick overview of, oh yeah, there will be some lapse. The interval that I lapsed before, according to the current interval, it's like, poof, it's just a tiny bit, right? So it's not a big deal. It's because it was outstanding for a very long time, because it's a backup. And I had a lot of bonus in the interval. But if the interval grew, like, I don't know, 3 months, then the yellow bar will be a lot larger, meaning I haven't recovered as much from the leech. I will need more repetitions in order to say that most of the interval now is clear. and the Leech is part of the past and it doesn't happen anymore. So this is the interpretation of the color. Let's see if I have something else. Yeah, that's it. In my collection, I don't have enough items to trigger this menu. So now you know this little detail that the color is actually color-coded and is telling you some information implicitly. Finally, we introduce a new window, a new dialog, but also a new feature. That is the calendar. It's open with Ctrl-W. Sometimes in older SuperMemos, this was just called Workload, then Workload Calendar, and in the documentation, now it's just called Calendar. It is the same thing. So basically, I can see, in this case, what I did today. Remember that in this case, it's dummy. It's what I have been doing the videos. So imagine. That's the number of repetitions, but what it means. What is this? 25 colon 2 parentheses 0 colon 0, right? Oh, it's kind of weird. If you hover, it doesn't tell me anything. You have the hints activated. It doesn't tell you that. This means the number of item repetitions and topic repetitions. Within the parentheses, this has been a new addition to SuperMemo 19, and I don't actually agree with the official definition. It's actually not happening. So I will put a comment in the video once I know exactly what it is. Then you can change that hey, what is scheduled. So today, the time of the recording, I have 200 items becoming outstanding. And tomorrow I will have 189, 203. It's quite heavy. This is not representing incremental reading. It's because I recently added merged language learning. You will have something like this, 9, 11, and so on. So in the workload calendar, I can see for every day, month, or year, the aggregation of those stats. Let me see how much work is, how many flashcards or topics are scheduled in the coming days. And I may take a decision. I can do the same, but monthly. And then I have the aggregation. So those repetitions are the average. Look at September, it's very high. But below that, 21, 5, 3. So you can tell when the merge happened, right? That it's created this peak. And then I can see the overall in the year, the average, monthly average, and the daily average. And that is from this year. I can go to the upcoming years if I want to, it's forecasting, or to see what I did. If I change how many new items I did. Do you see? This year, in this backup, I did 1,142 items. Last year, I did 3,125, and you can see mostly on June, 3,000 in 2022, and so on. You can see precisely each day what I did. So in January, look at that, 101 more, the same day, and so on. There are a lot of flows for here in the Fluency. We're not going to go to every single flow. Just to let you know that whatever you want to look at, you can double click, and this will open the browser window with the elements in that subset. We will cover subsets later on, very close to the end of the course. But it's very important to note this limitation, that if you remember, one of the element parameters is the element number, like the ID at the end of the day. But this, if you delete elements that you will delete by applying done and so on, this will be reused. So first, there will be elements that are deleted, like here, usually topics most of the time, or tasks rather than items. And some will be actually reused. Sometimes, if I sort, do you see this is impossible? Do you see the first repetition? That is impossible. That was from 2024. And the subset is from 2022. It's because those IDs, element numbers, those element numbers have been reused. I can also sort by element number. Do you see those super tiny low numbers? So have this into mind. It's good to know with a calendar. You can see everything, but because of how SuperMemo works, reuses this, it becomes pointless. That's why you should only do it as a forecast in the future. So in my case, if I want to see what I will have for Christmas, the workload, let's say Christmas, here you go, are those 5 elements. This will always work because it's impossible to me to delete those that I haven't done that. So usually, it's not bulletproof because I can delete by a search and perhaps use a schedule in the future, but most of the time it's safe. Just to let you know, the huge limitation of the workload calendar, that if you go back in the past, the longer in the past, the most likely is the elements are being reused and it becomes absolutely pointless. Let's see what means the retention in the calendar. So remember, we have the workload calendar. One of the options is retention, and we see this, right? 100%, 89, 84, and this is different from the second value, which is consolidation. So retention is the percentage of elements that you successfully recalled, remember, grade of 3, 4, or 5, on that day out of the total repetitions you have done. So if I have done 20 repetitions, but I succeeded in 18, then that's 90%, and I failed 2. High retention, most of the cards. Low retention, you struggle that day. What is high and low? Depends. In SuperMemo, the default is 95. But wait, 95% retention rate is not exactly the same as here. Or, well, there's a nuance, but this we have explained this already in previous videos. Then, this is the retention. It's just a ratio. One number divided over another. Then, consolidation, the second number, is the average stability of items repeated that day, scaled to 100. And again, higher means stronger memory traces. High consolidation is that most items reviewed had high stability. Is that the same? Retention is that I succeeded to recall, regardless of the stability. But if the stability is high or has increased, it's going to consolidation. That's why you cannot know consolidation on the same day. So today, I have 100%, but I don't have the consolidation because I will need to do the repetition on the elements that I reviewed today. It does make sense. Let's see. This is an example. It's very easy. It's perfection. Everything was success. Everything was stable. This is not. Even though the retention rate was very high, 99.5%, the consolidation it's 83. But today it's 83. Because perhaps there are a few items that I haven't seen yet. Again, meaning that this will be updating each time I see an item. And I succeed, by the way. If I don't, it will decrease. So, no worries if you don't understand the big picture. In the mastery track, we will do a case faking reviews and changing my time in the clock. So I go to the calendar a couple of times to see how it changes and so on. Just to let you know this difference. Ratio, that means that I succeeded all of the items out of 200, let's say. I actually can know that. Repetitions, 208. That means I have failed just one item out of those. So no worries. For the fluency, you only need to bother to worry about retention, and you have the retention accumulated overall in your collection. In the stats window, my retention is 96.28, 25%. Here I have the number of every individual day. Because I was tired, or the items were lower quality, could be lower, higher, but that's the absolute number. So now we know what we mean by retention, and by consolidation in the calendar. Then let's see when it's useful to look at them in the calendar. So in which situation should I do Ctrl W and take a peek of my retention rate and so on? First, to diagnose a bad review day. That what happened today, it is like crap, is 60%, is unusual, so the retention is especially low. Confirm why you struggled. Oh, it's because I added, I don't know, a new language in my collection. Okay. I think it's newer, it's fragile, it's a semantic, makes sense. If you don't know, you can, or is in the past, you can try this, that, hey, this day what happened? But remember the limitation that the more to the past you go, the dummier it becomes because the IDs are being reused. So you will have other unrelated elements there. Second, to track your memory performance over time. That, hey, my ability to create flashcards, the formulation, it's improving. The flashcards I'm creating are better. Let me see how the memory performance changes over time. Because in the retention, I only have, in the stats window, in retention, I have the result, the overall retention, right? Yeah, perhaps now I have hundreds of thousands of repetitions. So if I start declining or improving, I won't even change the third decimal until I do 100 repetitions, right? What I can do, hey, let me go here, let me go to the calendar and let me see if I have an speak. For instance, it's, oh yeah, in the 90s, there's not much difference. Yeah, someday it's 90, 96. Depends a little on the content. But hey, it's 89. What happened here? And then I see the items I have, and then I see that, oh, there are some that I had 7 lapses, there are hard elements, and so on. I can do a quick analysis. Next, to optimize the learning strategy based on outcomes. So you use your own data. Even though if it's trial and error, that, hey, I did this A/B testing, this doesn't work, okay. But I know it doesn't work because I have data that my retention, it's worsening, right? And if it increases, hey, this works. Could be that you use a different template, a different style, how you phrase. You do implicit questions, let's say. Or you're moving away from close relations to Q&A, or vice versa. That's something you can do. Then, to analyze and impact new material intake. That, oh, now I add Chinese or Japanese, one of those languages that are tough at the beginning. You will have a lower consolidation in your collection as an overall, but all of the weight is from the same place. So most of the items that come from the new material are worsening the performance. You can also know that because you will have the daily average. You will have here a daily average, and then, hey, that's 79, that's super low. But then I can filter. We'll see how, there are many use cases. When I open this subset, I can further filter it, and then turns out that they come from the same place, the same branch, the language learning, and so on. So it's not to identify the lower performance. It's that the lower, I already know it's a lower performance. I want to identify from what? The new material. Therefore, if I see it's impacting my consolidation, I will either decrease the speed I'm adding new material, or I will even stop and first review everything before getting new material. Next, to adjust, when should you look for retention in the calendar? To adjust the forgotten index based on real retention. Let's say by default you have a 10%, right? Let's say that I played with this and the language learning, I decrease that to 7%. Or something else, English, that is easiest for me, but I still want to review, I put 15%, a higher forgetting index, right? But then, because of the calendar, I see that, hey, I'm overperforming still in English. I can know that, and then, hey, let me do and even increase the forgetting index. I can afford even a higher forgetting index. Or most commonly will be the opposite. That, hey, I'm still forgetting too much. Let me decrease the forgetting index. Next, for planning and recovering from missed days, it should be like this. This is a backup. So the days that are reviews are days that I generally did something for the videos. It's not actually genuine use. But if let's assume I missed like 3 months, hey, perhaps you want to play with this. Depending, if now I get a very high retention rate, don't touch it. Don't. You will get crazy intervals already. But if you go in super decline, like it's 40%, 30%, hey, you can plan lighter loads to recover from consolidation. The day from now on, the next months, it will be chill. I will be introducing something new, but a lighter load to compensate what I need to in the backlog. And this is more or less a summary of everything we have seen, every situation. What to look at: the retention is lower, consolidation is lower, both. The retention over time, so the trend is going up or down, or retention after you resume. After 3 months, the first days, how much you have forgotten. And then the reason why. And that's the key. You do this for a purpose. Hey, it was a hard study session. This confirms it was a memory fatigue or was it just an overload. If it's too much overload, you will decrease it. You will use the priorities to just do a subset of that. No, I cannot do 100 repetitions, let me do 50. And I will use priorities of getting the 50 that are most important. You just added more, too much new content. Show unstable dominating. That you can delete those or put those in low priority and they will come later. You postpone that kind of thing. You want to test a new workflow or input method. You check both and see if it's helping or hurting. That, hey, I have been using AI and it always do Q&A, right? Hey, let me switch back to Consolidation. Is this working, the Consolidation? That's one of the examples. It's not overnight because you need to do the next reviews, the next repetitions of the items, remember. So it will take a few months. Long-term performance tracking, yep, how you're doing. The forgetting index tuning, that especially, first, if you change those, especially if you have heterogenic difficulty in your collection. If it's very easy that, it's just language learning, boom, on its own collection, and it's a lot easier to manage. Manage the cognitive load and the missed days, that monitor the post-break recovery. That, hey, it's enough that I do mercy, or no, I can still catch up without doing mercy. Something we'll see later on in the course. So more or less, this is everything you need to know when it's useful to check the retention and consolidation in the calendar. So by day, or averages by month, or even year, if you want to. Here we have different stats we can show. The workload, what is scheduled every day, then only the items and only the topics. That's color changes. And you may think, hey, what's the difference with the workload? Well, the workload contains both. It's first items plus and then the topics. And the only difference, if you are picky, is the color coding. Do you see now? It's the same color because everything is 0. Yeah, it doesn't even work. So it only changes to green. But for items, it's blue, this cyan color. And that's about it. It's the only change, the color. Then, if we change to retention, then we have color coding. That's more interesting. Meaning that, hey, what happens with red? Red means it should be, do you see when it's 100%? Even though it says repetitions, items, and topics, now what I have is retention and consolidation. So red means very high retention, but 100, an absolute perfect consolidation. Consolidation and retention are not the same. but this is what is being shown. Then, as a Fluent, you don't need to check that. It's a slight overkill for you. And just to let you know that this color-coded, when it's the opposite, you will have a different color. And the brighter the color, the worse the performance. Here are some days that I use it almost every single day. And you can tell that, hey, what happened those 2 days? Why I don't have a color here, those 2 days? Easy. It's because I haven't done any repetition. So there's no data. Let's continue. Then we have repetitions. It's also color-coded. Coded in a color that it is very hard to see the day, the number of the day, but at least you can quickly spot the days that, hey, I was true, the day 422 I did nothing. Therefore, the retention rate and consolidation are none. It's cannot be computed because I have done anything, right? So it's a nice touch. I don't know why when you have the items, it's not color-coded. So why here, if I have hundreds in June, you can tell I did some language learning. Why this is the same color, if everything is in the hundreds, right? Just to let you know, the weirdness of SuperMemo is not color-coded, not color-coded, not color-coded, is color-coded. Is color-coded, once again. And new items, it's not. So only repetitions and retention are color-coded. Beyond me. And new items is the items you create that day. So yes, this is a good example that I did subsets to finish off some branches. And most of what I did in the day are just creating elements. 722, Sunday. Now, why now checks a different day? If I go here, 827. So most of the repetitions are from creating elements. That's why you can, it's an example that you can infer some behavior based on those stats. That, oh wow, I did a lot of repetitions, like a parrot. No, I actually created a lot of items via subset. That's why you have all of those different options. Then, just to let you know that you can export this if you want in Excel, if you want further plotting or whatever. You can click on Browse or double click. So you will see the items I created. Now I can filter. And here you go. And most of what I did, there's a key binding. I'm not going to show the key bindings now for the Fluency, but just to let you know that it's possible to do. And one last detail is that you can customize how the date is shown. By the way, if you use a non-English Windows version, you will see the language you will see the dates in that language. And there's no way you can change that. So even though then you change your display language to English in Windows, SuperMemo will still display whatever. If it's Portuguese, Spanish, or your own language. You can change it to full, classic, weekday, and simple. 6th of May, and how you know the year? Oh, because of the header. This is useful if you want to be more compact. If you have a smaller screen resolution, feel free to use this. I have everything, so I see always the year. And that's all. Well, not all. You have graphs. And the graphs is of what you have selected here. Those are repetitions. The workload. Here you can see when I merged stuff that the workload was very high, right? Topics only, and all of this. So remember that the graph, what you are filtering here in the calendar, is the same that is being plotted. We're going to cover neural review in the Fluency track. Just to mention it, it's a very big deal. Usually expert users of SuperMemo, it's the top notch. It will be the first reason to use SuperMemo because of the neural review, which is on top of the incremental reading. It's a tool for creativity, not just for repetition, to keep information in the long-term memory, knowledge. But why I'm only going to show it to you and mention it in the Fluency track is because you need a lot of time to create a rich collection with semantic links, connections, and so on. So even though if you want to use it, you will need to wait quite a lot of time in order to have a meaningful use of this tool, this feature. That's why this will be covered in detail in 3 different sections in the mastery track. It's a big deal. It's more than 100 videos overall, but not here. So let's first define it. The core concept is a special review mode. It's not the regular, the outstanding. It's not a subset either. And it's often activated by going neural. You may have seen this in some menus, like here, learn, go neural, or perhaps you are in a registry and you can also click on neural. Nice. You can go neural for everything you can imagine, from an image registry member and whatever you have. The primary goal is to spark creativity and problem solving and the big picture thinking of what you have already in your collection. Meaning, you have learned A, B, C, and D facts, but you didn't do the connection between them that, hey, I get a new insight within what I already know, kind of thing. But not just limited to this. So it works by showing you elements associated with your current topic. If you go by topic, you could go by something else. It's not limited to a topic. It doesn't matter if it's outstanding or not. It doesn't work this way. Basically is concept that is set or concept that is linked or other elements that are linked or the hierarchy. This is an extract of this parent, so everything has some value, is multiplied by one constant, and what has the higher value ranks higher. So you go and work this by meaning, by relationship, not by physical relationship in the knowledge tree, or because it's outstanding and you just go by priority or whatever metric. Then, it's not part of the main speech repetition schedule that is used for memorization. Why? Because it's used for creativity. You don't care if it's outstanding or not. How does it work? Very high level. Uses the concept of spreading activation, which mimic how the human brain finds related memories with neurons and so on. When you go neural in SuperMemo on an element, can be a topic, an item, a picture, and if you really stretch it, could be a sound and whatever. SuperMemo follows a trail of connections to show you related knowledge or information, because it could be processed stuff or unprocessed. If it's linked, it's likely that the element that is linking is processed because you added the link, of course, but what has been linked perhaps is unprocessed. It's just, hey, it's the start of Wikipedia article, and that's it. I haven't processed that. Then those connections are built from, to summarize, the knowledge tree, parents, siblings, and children, hyperlinks, and links without the hyper, and concept maps you manually build linking important ideas. We're not going to see how this is done because it's a big deal that you cannot get the power yet. You will need to wait quite a long time. Then, there's an analogy. 2 tools for 2 jobs. You have the librarian, is a space repetition. The job is to file facts in your brain and pull them to review just before you forget them. It's organized, scheduled, focused on retention. Boom. Easy. Neural review, instead, is the brainstorming partner. Its job is to pull many different facts from the shelves and lay them on a table together. It's spontaneous, associative, focused on connection, not retention. You will use retention later, but not for creativity. Then, code, for the one, it's just to encapsulate the idea. A standard repetition builds the bricks of knowledge. Nice. Neural Review, instead, shows you how those bricks can be assembled into a new unexpected structures. Hey, you meant the bricks were meant to build a house. Hey, but did you know you can build this thing and this other thing instead? Then, when to use Neural Review? It's always available in SuperMemo. Even if you start a new collection, it's completely empty, you can go neural if you want to. It will be inefficient or very close to random, but you can do it. Then, by problem solving, creative writing, getting the big picture review, or to generate ideas, more or less for those aspects. Everything goes into creativity. You want to build facts, quotes, ideas for an article, an essay on something else. You don't care if you memorize that because it's for writing. It's to generate output, not input. The big picture is that you have learned 100 small facts in a subject, in isolation, and now once you have acquired this and has crystallized, then you see the relationships that you couldn't before because everything was new to you. Neural Review can help you put it together faster. Faster as in time involved to create the big picture, and quicker as in the natural time you need to get there. So perhaps I will get there eventually, in 2 years. With the Neural Review, I'll get in 6 months, sooner. Not only that, the time I have spent is lower. Instead of 3 hours, will be 2 hours to say something. Then idea generation, just simply exploring your knowledge base can spark new expected associations. And it's sad that most of the time it's quite random. It's arbitrary. That it's because it happened that I have seen those topics in sequence. And now I get this spark of connection. But if that sequence was not presented to me, it's very likely I will not have thought of that. So sometimes it's just the acceptance that, hey, it's my idea, but it's just a realization of what was thrown to my face, rather than, oh, I'm super intelligent and I got that insight. And finally, the most cliche, problem solving. I want to create a tool in software for myself to do this, to solve a problem, right? Well, I have learned how to create loops, the basics. Now that I know this, let me solve the problem. Or it could be, I know, finance. That, hey, I need more money to make a living, right? I cannot pay the bills. Let me solve this problem. How I can monetize the stuff that I already do, and you do this Neural Review. Then, clarification. Neural Review is a creative association. Usually by Control F2, not always. You know, in SuperMemo, sometimes it's just a different key binding in different dialogues. Most of the time, it's Control F2. And neural networks, that now you may have heard this because of AI, uses AI to optimize the main repetition algorithm. That's not the same thing. This is, if you remember the analogy, this will be a more fancy way to do the librarian. But this is not a brainstorming partner. It's still focused, it's using AI, it's using neural networks, but just for retention. It's something to take in consideration. Those are separate advanced features, but both have the word neural, but have completely different goals. So the big picture, and this is a massive deal, so please, once you finish this course, the Fluency, and you spend some time, half a year to release, if you're consistent, half a year could be enough. Try to go neural and see what happens. Then, the big picture. Neural Review turns SuperMemo, a collection that is a black box, into an interactive extension of your mind, not a second brain, please, and it's because of what you want to learn. It's not what you want to store and then retrieve. That will be a second brain. But in order to do that, you have to use links and some other requisites that comes with this, that usually is friction high. Not many people do this. And then, it is a tool designed to help you think with your knowledge, not just remember it. This is the key. You just do like a parrot in Anki or any platform, you will just memorize. Give me a question, I provide the answer. And if it's language learning, give me an answer, give me a sentence or a meaning, and I will tell you the word, right? Yeah, that doesn't mean necessarily you put it in practice. In your active vocabulary, you use it, and use it well. This goes beyond everything, not just language learning, anything. That, okay, I have acquired this knowledge, now I know this about chemistry, vitamins, da da da. Okay, now I want to think with my knowledge, not just to contain it, being able to recall it. I want to use it for real. That is a massive deal. Sometimes it's so good, even though I don't have much power because I simplified my approach with concepts. At some degree, I do experience neural review, and it's a massive deal. It has been enough to change my approach with concepts that I go back to be more precise because it makes a difference, but in the long term. So that's everything you need to know as a fluent. It's a very, very big deal, and please do it, not now, but later on. See you incrementally.